Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Trustless 2020 Day 2. I'm here with Tim Moreton, and from Celo. He will be teaching you how to run a validator on Celo. So take it away, Tim.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a good morning or evening, wherever in the world you may be. My name's Tim Moreton. I'm on the engineering team at Celo. In particular, I work on the Celo protocol. I focus on consensus, proof of stake, and on-chain governance. And over the last 6 months in particular, we've been at C-Labs, one of the organizations supporting the Celo protocol. We've been putting together a incentivized testnet called Baklava, which I'll tell you about. So in terms of the protocol, Celo is not yet at mainnet stage. We have gone through sort of 2 testnets. First, Alpha Horrors was like our first testnet, a proof of concept, which we are now focusing on using for supporting developers wanting to build on top of the platform. Baklava is an incentivized testnet where we're running the Great Celo Stakeoff. So the Stakeoff is a competition to allow us to understand more about the operational security of the network, find issues, help validators build operational experience, and it's been running for a little while now. Unfortunately for you guys, what that means is that if you're not already playing part of this as part of the Stakeoff, there's registration is now closed, but the network is public and you can join as a full node. So in a few moments, we'll run through a tutorial to do that. But like actually participating part of it as a validator at the moment is not possible because we only have 2 weeks to run on the competition. We've had a ton of interest, and maybe some of you are actively participating, and it's been great to see the levels of engagement we have. However, there are lots of opportunities to participate as validators and other ways of operating nodes in the network as the protocol moves closer to mainnet. And so hopefully all of this content is going to be valuable to you. So to start with, I'm going to just talk a little bit about Baklava, the testnet. We'll switch to the terminal. I think this is very focused as a hands-on session, and so we're gonna just set up a full node, get that syncing with the network, and then switch to the CLI, have a look at some of the tools that we have available for inspecting the network status and so on, and just talk through some of the extra steps that you would need to do if you were actually standing up a validator. And then I have a few slides to explain Celo's proof of stake mechanism and just give a little bit more context about things that are maybe different about Celo overall. So feel free to ask questions at any time. Of course, I will periodically pick those questions up and try and answer them, and I'll also add links to the comments at the side as well. Yeah, so you can find out a bunch of information about Celo at the Celo website here. So I'm just going to add links as I go. You can see here details and information about the Stakeoff. This is the leaderboard. As you can see, a number of participants, a number of organizations that you've heard from this weekend have been actively participating over the last couple of months in this process. We've learned a lot. The community have been fantastic. As I say, we've got 2 weeks to run on that. The network at the moment has been pretty stable, a few issues, but we're making great progress towards mainnet here. So yeah, so what we're going to do today is follow the instructions to run a full node on Celo. So this is a hands-on tutorial. You're very welcome to follow along at home. The instructions are all online, so if you don't keep up, don't worry. We're also available on Discord, and we'll be able to provide assistance there. So yeah, let me add this. So yeah, so we're going to go through the process of running a full node, like connect to the network and get that syncing. There are also instructions here for running a validator, which are like somewhat more complicated because they involve setting up not just a validator, but also proxies to so that the validator is running in a private network and not exposed to the public internet, and also attestations as well, which I'll come back and explain a bit later. So hopefully, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Celo protocol yet, I will explain all in about hopefully 7 to 10 minutes, I guess. So yeah, switching over to the terminal now. So I have Docker installed. That's one of the prerequisites here. But all I'm going to do is follow the instructions which are on that page. So Celo under the hood is a comprises a blockchain which inherits a lot of code from Ethereum. So for those of you familiar with Ethereum and the tooling around Ethereum, many things here will be familiar. On top of the Celo blockchain, the network itself comprises a ton of smart contracts for proof of stake, for online governance, for stability protocol, like a family of stable coins backed by a reserve, plus an identity protocol to help map from real world identifiers such as phone numbers through to addresses. So, and on top of that, the Celo protocol supports, like above an SDK layer, includes a sort of first party, if you like, wallet, and the opportunity through a SDK called DAppKit to integrate other dApps with the wallet. And of course, you can also build your own wallet or other applications on top. So what we're going to do here is just run through those instructions. So feel free to follow along. We're going to export a variable which tells us where the Docker image is, and a network ID, which identifies the network from others. We're going to pull the Docker image. Hopefully it's already up to date. It may not be the case for you. And then we're just going to set up a directory in which we're going to store like the chain data. So the first thing we're going to do is create an account on the network, which is not really creating on the network, but just generating a key pair. So this entry here, this creates an account in the local key store and gives us an address associated with that account. So we can just put that in a variable now. And so then we're just going to set up the Genesis block. So from a chain state perspective, things look very similar to Ethereum. There are a bunch of differences which we can get into a little bit later. But this command basically just initializes a Genesis block. We get hold of some boot nodes so that we can connect to, we have an entry point into the network, and then we can start the node. And actually, I won't run it in detachment. And so at the moment, there are actually a lot of nodes which I think have set their peers lower than the number of machines in the network. And the logging looks a little scary. We'll probably see a whole bunch of warnings. So anyway, we started the node. And so you should end up seeing a bunch of these like messages saying import a new chain segment. You can ignore the handshake failed messages. We'll be fixing that. And that's basically it. Over time, that network, that node will sync. And so that's not quite running a validator, but it is a step along the way. And I'll come back in a moment to sort of talk about why that's the case. But once you have that node synced, you can also then use that node to issue queries on the network through the CLI. So I'm just gonna, yeah, in fact, let me, so you should be able to install the CLI as easily as running npm install -gs celo/celo CLI. That package should just install. If you have any issues, it's likely, at least in my case, that be to do with various Xcode things. But once you get that package installed, you can use that to like inspect any Celo protocol network. And so, yeah, there are a bunch of instructions for like how to get hold of that. Just add that link to the chat as well. So I can point our CLI at hopefully a running transaction node, which is on the back of a testnet. And then do things like, for example, list registered validators. And just generally inspect the state of the network as well. So what you can see here in this output is that there are a whole bunch of different validators from different organizations who are like registered. So essentially have supplied a stake for the proof of stake protocol. Address here, a friendly name. Affiliation is the group that they're part of, the validator group. I'll explain that in a second. Score is the validator, basically an uptime score. So we track how many signatures you provide on a block-to-block basis, and there's a sort of moving average of a score, which determines how many rewards you get. And then, yeah, public key information there as well. So we won't go into that today. You see there's a whole range of organizations taking part here. And I think having a lot of fun learning a ton about the sort of nuances of the protocol. So yeah, what can we do? So for example, I could run a mock election and see what would happen if an election were run right now, like which validators would get elected. And it's these ones. I can dig in and find out more about these various validators. And these details are also like integrated into the block explorer as well. And so over here, we are still syncing. This is going to take a little while to sync, but yeah, we don't need to wait for it. So I'll just pause and see if anyone has any questions at this stage. Okay, looking good. All right. So I'll just switch back then and like explain a little about the Celo protocol. In fact, the mission of the project, what the project is trying to achieve, and then just dig in a little to proof of stake and what, why, try and focus on why as validators you might be interested in participating in Celo. And obviously there are many networks out there, and there is a you only have a limited amount of time and resources, and so just give you a few sort of bits of information to help you like figure out whether Celo is something that you should be thinking about more. So let me switch back. Cool. So I hope you guys can see that okay. So yes, Celo's mission is to build a monetary system that creates conditions for prosperity for all. I think one big distinction, at least in my mind, between what Celo is looking to achieve and what many other projects that you'll come across in the crypto blockchain space is that Celo is very much like a product-focused project. The aim is very much to solve real problems that we as a community believe that end users experience, which are really around access to basic financial services. So the idea of essentially there are far more people in the world who have access to a smartphone than have access to a bank account. And that is for a large number of reasons. But the Celo project believes that that gap can be closed and people's prosperity improved as a result of doing that. But we don't want to do this in a way which causes those financial tools to be behind a big corporate wall. We believe that should be an open framework and an open foundation on which to build richer and more interesting and powerful financial tools for everybody that work for a whole wide range of needs around the world. And so to do that, we're building this on an entirely decentralized protocol. So the sort of upshot, though, is that the network is intended from basically to provide the sort of perfect underpinnings for a mobile first experience. So we're imagining that virtually all of the users of this platform will be using smartphones and potentially low-end smartphones where processing power is not particularly high, where data connections are potentially patchy and in some cases expensive as well. And so in order to deliver a great user experience, which is something that is very a very important part of Celo's approach, we have had to think up and down the stack about lining up the technology to sort of make that possible. And so we've ended up building a number of things to support that. So this is just a sort of sample of some of those things. So stable value currencies. If you're trying to solve end user problems, you need to be able to like support transactions in currencies that users understand. And that doesn't mean cryptocurrencies. That means things that look and feel like regular fiat currencies. Phone number PKI. If you are want to send a transaction to your friend or pay at a merchant, you don't want to be having to deal with like opaque bit strings or like hex digits. You want to be importing your contacts and giving the app permission to like read your contacts and being able to send money directly to well-known identifiers such as mobile phones.
Hey Tim, there seems to be a problem with the screen share. Do you mind if I put you on video?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Can you try screen sharing one more time?
Yeah, let me try again. How is that?
Much better.
Okay. Is it the full screen that doesn't work? That seems
yeah, before there was just a click to exit full screen, but now this is it seems to be working.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it like this. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. Okay, so on-chain governance. One of the things that we've seen about earlier crypto projects is that like this is an incredibly fast-moving space, and it's incredibly important to be able to, as needs change, as requirements change, and as like the dynamics of projects change, we need to be able to, as a community, like direct the project where remain agile and direct the project where it needs to go. And so, as much as feasible of Celo protocol is actually subject to on-chain governance. So proof of stake, as I mentioned, the Celo protocol started using Ethereum as a base, took out proof of work and implemented a Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus mechanism and built on top of that a proof of stake algorithm. So the proof of stake algorithm is quite novel. There's a bunch of interesting things that are a part of it, but fundamentally that allows us to achieve what we believe is probably higher throughput, better security for the network, immediate finality, and much lower energy costs. So the Celo protocol retains a full EVM compatibility, and so all of the smart contracts on top of the Celo blockchain are built in Solidity, and like regular Ethereum toolchain is something that you can just go ahead and use. A number of just to sort of as an example of one of the changes that we've made in the Ethereum or like the Celo blockchain, which is something that like we felt was an obstacle in how Ethereum did things in terms of the requirements of end users being able to pay in stable value currencies. Was around like making it possible to pay for gas in these stable coins. So if I want to send you as a user like 10 Celo dollars, I do not want to have to retain a certain amount of the native utility token of the platform in order to pay for transaction fees. So gas is payable in any whitelisted stable token there. Also talking about like low powered devices, one of the things we've done is a number of innovations around like making sync for ultralight clients. So this was a full node that we set up, but there is an ultralight mode which basically syncs blocks only every needs to only look at one block every epoch. An epoch is in the main network going to be probably a day. So one in every 10,000 blocks in order to like sync without trust the state of the network. And then we've got further optimizations using zero knowledge proofs on top of that. So hopefully that was visible to you. Let me just check the comments. Okay. Okay, everybody seems to be able to see stuff. Nice. Right, I'll keep going. So let's just talk a little bit about the topology of a network and of a Celo network. So validators participate in the BFT consensus protocol. They're selected using the proof of stake mechanism. There's also this role for full nodes in the network. So if you think about a network designed to achieve the aims that the Celo protocol has of like providing financial services for potentially millions of end users, if you have, say, the order of a few hundred validators and potentially like a few million light clients, there is a big gap between what, like, just simply between the number of TCP connections that the validators can terminate and the number of light clients that exist. So there is a significant opportunity and role in the network for full nodes, nodes that are in every other way like a validator, but are not participating at that moment in the consensus protocol. And their role is to basically serve requests from light clients. And in Ethereum, this is something where there are no clear incentives. And as a result, it's actually quite difficult to get a light client synced on, especially on a test network. But in the Celo protocol, we've introduced what's called a gateway fee, which is, I liken it to the model of a cafe, where when you walk into a cafe, you're renting their Wi-Fi, maybe you're renting their space, you're renting their heat if it's cold outside. But the expectation is that from time to time you purchase a coffee, and otherwise you'll be thrown out pretty quickly. And the same model applies here with full nodes. Like when you send a transaction through the network in exchange for service that you've received from a full node, you include in the transaction structure the identity of the gateway node that you've been using, and that node receives a fee separate from gas payment, but like receives a fee when that node gets when that transaction gets accepted into a block by the validator consensus protocol. And so that's a revenue stream for full nodes, which doesn't exist in Ethereum, is additional and is particularly for the Celo protocol, but which we hope will encourage. It's a permissionless on-ramp. It's a way of earning cryptocurrency without having to put up a stake or participate as a validator. It's something where we hope individuals who are located close to our user base will be able to like stand up services. If we look at validators in a bit more detail, the actual setup process for a validator is a little bit more complicated than just running a single full node. In front of a validator, there are a number of proxies. These are essentially full nodes which are configured in a special way to basically forward gossip messages and like consensus protocol messages directly to a validator sitting on a private network to which the proxies are also attached. So this model might be familiar to some folks who are validators on Cosmos. The setup, I think, is sort of relatively similar. One difference is that consensus in Celo does not use gossip itself. So what the proxies are doing is basically proxying direct connections between the validators and each other. And the way that validators find each other is they operate this announce protocol whereby they are like continually in a secure fashion telling all the other validators in a manner that's encrypted so that only they can see it, all their actual position on the network, their IP address. Validators also run an attestation service. This is a way of verifying you own end users own a phone number. So you as a validator can also get paid to send text messages on the network's behalf, and that fee goes directly to you, and that verification payment is the thing which allows like a user to basically register, hey, please map my phone number to my address, so that other users can make transactions directly. Just going to roar through these slides pretty quickly. One thing that's interesting about the Celo proof of stake protocol is there's this concept of a validator group. A group is an additional construct. So users elect users, like lock up gold, and then use that lock gold to elect a group. Groups have validators affiliate to groups, and so you can think of a group a bit like a political party in a proportional representation system, and a validator as a candidate. And the idea here is that if you think of the average user, they do not probably have time, and there is a significant asymmetry of information around like how much they should trust the validator, what the validator's security practices are, and how the operation of that validator works. Groups have a much longer lasting relationship with those validators, and in the same way that when you vote for a particular political party, you are trusting to some extent that that party has vetted its candidates, and that presents a much simpler, more realistic choice for end users, and the groups in turn can receive a commission from validators, but also like accept some of the risk. So for example, when validators are slashed, groups are also slashed, and groups share rewards for validators. So yeah, I'll just quickly summarize this concept of locked gold, which is at the center of the proof of stake protocol. So you lock up some gold, you can use that for voting for validator groups. You can use it as a stake for validators, a stake for validated groups, and you can also use it to vote on on-chain governance proposals. In turn for like getting elected and providing a validator service, there are also rewards, of course. Those rewards are delivered at the end of an epoch, which is the period in which an election lasts. Typically, that would be, at the moment, it's an hour on Backlever, but we suspect it will be probably a day on mainnet. Validators and validated groups receive epoch rewards. You also receive epoch rewards as simply for locking up gold and voting for a group that elects a validator. And then there are a few other sources as well, which we don't have time to dig into here. I think just at a very high level, it's worth sort of thinking about, like, what do you need to do in order to get rewarded as a validator? Firstly, you need to like keep your validator up. There is this uptime score we talked about earlier. There is a commission associated with the group, which is the group share. And then also there is a sort of effect on rewards caused by previous slashing incidents. So if you are part of a group where a validator has been recently slashed, then you will also your future rewards will also suffer. So I think we're at time in terms of just the basic elements. There's obviously a ton more to dive into here. The final thing I wanted to sort of mention in the presentation before I open for questions is around attestations. So I mentioned briefly that there's an additional service that validators can run called the attestation service. This flow looks a bit like this. A wallet user will request attestations from a smart contract. Randomly selected validators will be chosen for that attestation. When the wallet user can then like request the attestation services of those validators to send text messages on their behalf. They reveal their phone number to the issuer. The text messages get sent, and then when the wallet redeems those attestations or completes those attestations with the smart contract, at the same time as that mapping getting added from the phone number to the address, the validators whose attestations were like passed forward through this chain are also paid. So I think in summary, like, Celo is a very interesting protocol where there is a ton of momentum towards mainnet at the moment. It's an ideal time at which to like learn and find out more about what Celo is doing, and like ideally participate as either a validator or as a full node. There are some interesting design choices in the proof of stake mechanism and in the way that we've modified, made a bunch of different changes in Ethereum, and yeah, I encourage you to take a look. Cool. And so yeah, so I'm around for some questions. So if anybody has questions, I'm very happy to take them. Thanks. Can I comment on the economics? Absolutely. Cool. So I'll take some of these in order. Can I comment on the economics? We heard earlier that the payout is in stablecoin. Yeah, that's right. I guess it's a different design choice to many protocols. Most protocols sort of layer stablecoins on top and don't consider it sort of a part of the initial protocol stack. And so that opportunity, that sort of design choice is not available to most protocols. But obviously it is for Celo. And one of the reasons we chose to make payouts for validators available as Celo dollars is because most of the costs that validators need to defray are in like fiat currencies. We're sort of expecting like, you know, data center or colo rental, power costs, like operating costs, cloud service costs, for example. And in order to be able to aid validators with a much more sort of predictable pattern in terms of making sure their costs are covered, that was like one of the sort of rationales for doing that. Of course, as soon as you receive Celo dollars on the network, you can exchange it for Celo gold if you wish. It's not something you have to stick with dollars, but the idea is to make it more predictable from the point of view of validators. Yeah, amount of Celo required for staking and the best way to get them for new validators. Great question. Yeah, so this is still TBD. Of course, until mainnet launches, the picture may change. Right now, in the Backlever Great Celo Stakeoff in the Backlever network, the requirement is 10,000 Celo gold to stake for a validator, and 10,000 Celo gold to admit a validator into a validator group. So essentially 20, if you want to run your own validator group rather than join another one, or you want to like, if you're looking at the total sort of cost of getting that elected, that is 20,000 Celo gold. What's the best way to get them for new validators? Well, that's exactly what we have been running the Stakeoff for. There are, subject to like terms and conditions and KYC and so on, like the whole purpose of the leaderboard, the folks who are in among the sort of top currently 50 positions on the leaderboard, there is a chance to earn mainnet Celo gold and then be able to use that for running a validator in mainnet. And so that's sort of like the whole purpose of one of the whole purposes of the competition, as well as obviously building operation experience. For folks who've missed the time frame of that, there will be other sort of opportunities. But yeah, no announcements on that right now. Aren't phone numbers notoriously insecure? Yeah, I mean, so there's no such. So there's an interesting question around like the identity protocol and so on. In fact, let me put these together. Aren't phone numbers are notoriously insecure? SIM swapping not an issue? How do you handle prepaid burner phones and soft phones? Yep. So there's no requirement for you to use the mapping from addresses onto phone numbers. Sorry, from phone numbers onto addresses. So first, phone numbers are obviously only as secure as the carrier that you are with, and SIM swapping is a real issue. The consequences of being SIM swapped are that somebody can potentially redirect new funds to a new account. So the challenge there is to provide the tools from a sort of user experience perspective as to whether somebody's account is the account you're expecting. So if I'm sending to a friend and that friend has since been SIM swapped, and it's a different account from the account I've been using to send them funds for the last 3 months, then that's a sort of user experience question, like how the wallet can surface that to end users. And then even the fact that a notification, or sorry, even the fact that a mapping has changed recently is an indication that there could potentially be a problem. So there's no such thing here as absolute security, and I think that it's really a matter of like providing the best security-oriented user experience to help users understand the limitations of what that mapping can provide. It's also worth noting that once you've made that initial like handshake, then you don't need to necessarily go back to that mapping subsequently. How do you handle prepaid burner phones and soft phones? Yeah, again, great question. We will be providing a sort of client support for not having to use this protocol. This part of the protocol is optional. Various wallets or like apps built on top will not have to use it if that's not appropriate for the design of the, if that's not appropriate for the use case. Yeah, I mean, I think there's it's supporting another form of two-factor plans. So yeah, I think there are many different things, many different like forms of like composite identity that you can imagine, like using to like build increased confidence that an address really represents the end user that you're thinking about. And it's an incredibly interesting area. It's one that I think like organizations like Keybase have explored in a very interesting fashion. At the moment, there are a number of options. We at C Labs have not like, we have not like built a specific roadmap around like one or more, but I think that as we approach mainnet, I think there could be I would love to see like the community sort of converge around like building a much more sort of interesting story around composite identity. Right, exactly. So signal protocols alert when the recipient's secret code has changed. That's exactly one of the things that the Celo wallet can do. Right. So if your mapping has changed and you've paid this person before, then like that's really a user question, right? Yeah, and I guess like just to sort of re-emphasize, one of the things that I feel is particularly interesting about the Celo protocol is that to participate as a validator, like at and around mainnet launch, is really to be able to contribute to a like a whole stack project where there is a product where there is a significant desire to like solve real end user problems. And I think rather than wait to sort of build it and they will come, in terms of like some of the sort of the approaches taken by some other infrastructure projects or platforms in the crypto space, being part of Celo, I think, is being part of a project that is really looking to sort of verticalize and target a set of use cases end to end. Cool. So just before I sign off, I will also send a few other links. If I can find them. Just send a few other links to material that could be interesting. So there is a forum where you'll find a whole bunch of information about the back of the testnet. Oh, somebody asked about number of validators and I didn't answer it. Yeah, so initially we're looking at around 100, but you know, I'm doing a bunch more scalability testing to see if that can be increased. And let me just include a link for Discord. The community is really active in Discord, like tons of folks helping each other out. It's been like fantastic to see. And so like, I definitely encourage all of you to like join the conversation there. There's the Discord link. And then there's a much longer version of the presentation around mastering around the presentation that I you saw some of the slides you'll recognize from here in that YouTube presentation there. So if you want more information, feel free to dig into that. Oh, and last question, can you earn as a validator group and run a regular node simultaneously? Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think that there's, you know, one way we see validator groups sort of emerging is the validators will set them up for themselves. And so you'll get the X validator group, which contains only the X validators. But you may also see validator groups whose role is much more to like be sort of security auditors or provide like a reputational stamp on validators. So it's like, you know, I'm a Celo gold holder. I'm, you know, a regular user. I don't understand the intricacies of proof of stake, and I definitely don't understand whether the validator or validator group that I'm necessarily voting for is, and that I'm looking to like attach my vote to so that I earn rewards, is well set up or better set up than another option to support the network and provide good service and good uptime and like and has a sort of best practice operational security setup. So to some extent, like end users will lean on reputation, and I think that you can imagine validator groups emerging who like build reputations around being able to vet and identify validators with great security records and add them to their group and provide and as a result, take a cut of those funds. So there's nothing which stops you being the validator and a validator group and potentially running a bunch of full nodes simultaneously, or any of those individually. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this and ask all these great engaging questions. Yeah, please get in touch at any of those, like either on the forum or on Discord, or I'm Tim Moreton on Twitter. So yeah, and I hope you have a great rest of the conference.
And see Tezos.
Thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate your time. And Tezos is coming up next in 10 minutes, so stick around and learn how to run a validator on Tezos. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.